All right, it's 7:30 p.m. We're going to start this Rutherford Board of Education regular meeting, March 21st, 2022. We're going to ask everyone to please stand if you can for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Kelly, please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Present.
Mr. Bogosian?
Present.
Mr. Conti?
Present.
Mr. Healy?
Here.
Mrs. Jones?
Present.
Mr. Mazzone?
Here.
Dr. Racine?
Here.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Present.
Dr. Awadi?
Here.
You have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meeting of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Rutherford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place posted on the bulletin board outside the Borough Clerk's office, mailed to the Herald, South Bergenite, and the Record newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk. Hard copies of the agenda are available in the meeting room, and the agenda is posted electronically on Friday before the meeting date on the district's website at www.rutherfordschools.org. Subsequent to the meeting, a video of the meeting will be uploaded to the district's website, www.rutherfordschools.org. The video link can be found by opening the Board of Education link and clicking on Public Meetings and then Videos. Board members, in your packets, there are two sets of minutes we have to approve, one for the regular meeting, the other for the executive session from February 14th, 2022. Any comments or questions about those sets of minutes? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please enter those. Next, we have the report of the student representative. Mr. Raffanello reached out to both Mr. Hurley and myself, was feeling a little under the weather, so we'll invite him to the April 4th meeting to do his presentation then. So that will carry us to our special presentation that we have now, which is the budget presentation. We'll turn it over to Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Dr. Awadi. Before I start, I just want to introduce you to Catherine Derrich here in the green. She is the Assistant Business Administrator in Garfield, the Garfield Board of Ed, and I am proud to be mentoring her this year. So she's here to just watch and see how it's supposed to be done. Of course. Okay, a lot of this will look familiar because it is a work in process, but we'll run through it anyway. And there are some new things that I do want to make sure you're familiar with. As we start putting together the budget, we have certain objectives. We want to build upon current program offerings. We want to consider anything new that we'd like to put into the budget. We always have to consider our facilities. We have older buildings, as you know, so we look for ways to improve. Prioritize those, maintenance, repair, ongoing stuff also is in addition to the big projects. And then we review our staffing needs. Sources of funds. Basically our budget, which is now up in the $50 million range, we get from four places. The lion's share of it comes from the local tax levy, state aid, federal aid, and then some miscellaneous. We'll touch on each of those. Before we get to the local tax levy, I wanted to talk about Chapter 44. Chapter 44 was a 2020 law that restructured the school employees' health benefits plan. If you're aware of it, prior to that point, there were about 25 or 30 different health benefits plans that a board could offer to its employees. Rutherford had narrowed that down to, I think, about 6. Really, there were 3 that people signed up for, so we were only using 3. This Chapter 44 did eliminate all of those options except for what's called Direct 10 and Direct 15, which are the better plans, the more popular plans, but it eliminated Direct 1525 plan, which in our contract with the Rutherford Education Association was the default plan for all new employees. So the law comes along, it trumps the contract, and Direct 1525 goes away effective January 1st of last year, 2021. So at that point, we went through, as we do every fall, open enrollment. And in order to implement Chapter 44, what the state did is kick everybody out of all the plans, signed everybody up for what's called the Educator's Health Plan. That's the new one. And then if you were eligible for Direct 10 or Direct 15, then you could re-enroll in those. So Direct 1525, we had almost 100 people in that program. So this was, a bit of turmoil to get this thing up and running. So the Educator's Health Plan becomes the new default. That provides reduced benefits, has increased deductibles, it restricted some services. It also had cheaper premiums and less expensive employee contributions. So we had a pretty good turnout into that plan too. Whether that was intended or by default, because everybody was pushed into that plan, I don't know. But the legislation went on to say that any savings realized as a result of Chapter 44 had to be returned to the taxpayers by way of a reduction in the local tax levy. Now, as you know, and we'll get into this again, as we do every year, there's a 2% tax levy cap. That's all we have to work with. There are some allowable adjustments for that, but those are things that we haven't been eligible for a number of years. So it's not really an issue for us. So now we're talking about an adjustment to our tax levy based on our results from Chapter 44. By my calculations, and I went through month by month premium bills, I see that we saved a total of $136,000 between calendar year 2021 and calendar year 2020. Remember, the EHP plan came in January 1st, 2021. So as relates specifically to Chapter 44, we have 74 employees who switched enrollment from Direct 1525, which was their default and then disappeared, into the Educator's Health Plan. So we saved about $84,000 with that. Okay, but at the same time, we were not able to legally or contractually direct all those 1525 people into the EHP plan. They had the option still to move up into Direct 10 or Direct 15. So we did see 24 people switch enrollment up to either one of those plans, which are better, more expensive plans. That cost us $119,000. So the net impact of our net cost to the district of Chapter 44 implementation was actually $35,000. In addition, for 2021, the state had reduced premiums, as they had done the year prior too, for the Direct 15 and Direct 10 plans. They reduced them by about 4.38%. That generated $171,000 in savings for the district. That impacts not only the premium, but it also impacts the employee benefit contribution as well. Nevertheless, the state calculated a savings of $290,000 for us. I'm not sure where they got that. I know they gathered up a whole lot of information. They had some kind of unreadable report that had to be completed, and that's the number they came up with. We have been given the opportunity to appeal that number if we feel it's incorrect. We have appealed that number as of last week, and supposedly they'll be reviewing all those appeals this week. So we'll see what happens. Right now, the budget has been prepared, assuming that $300,000 is coming out. So we had to do some cutting. We had to, just sharpen the pencil, as they say. So what is our tax?
Mr. Kelly, can we just go back to that for 1 minute?
Yeah, please.
I just want to make sure everybody is aware that the cost to the district for Chapter 44 was an increase of $35,000. The way school boards reads the law, the way Mr. Kelly reads the law, the way I read the law, is that the savings that were supposed to impact your tax levy were directly related to Chapter 44. Direct 10, Direct 15 are not under that chapter. So whereas we saved $171,000 because of premium reductions, from the state's perspective, that should not even count towards the Chapter 44 law. So it is a bit mind-boggling of where they came up with a number that doesn't really match anything, and certainly doesn't match what the intent of the law is. And I think, Mr. Kelly, 40 districts in Bergen County or something like that were appealing?
It was 33 the last
33?
I heard. This only impacted districts who are spending above adequacy, which we are, which means the state, for anybody, the state is not meeting its obligations in funding local school districts, but a lot of districts, such as Rutherford, find the way to put in some extra money to provide additional programs. Some districts are not able to do that. So if you're below that adequacy number, then this did not impact you at all. But we're above, and in fact, I would say Ridgewood, where I'm complaining about $300,000, they got hit with $4.7 million. So I don't know how you deal with that, but that's a different animal altogether.
So it's not a Rutherford problem. It's a problem with the state's interpretation of implementation of the law, which is different from the way everybody else seems to be interpreting it. But again, when we talk about Dr. Racine's chart at the end of the, about how we had those couple of years where you can't make up for them, if the tax levy gets cut, and especially if it's cut not properly, not following the rules they set up, that's hard to recover from when you go forward, because your 2% is always based on a lower sum that you're beginning with.
Right.
So Mr. Kelly found out about this, last Thursday?
A week ago, Thursday.
Yeah. So it has been a hectic a week and a half trying to figure all this out. And we're waiting to hear what the state has to say about the numerous appeals they've been given.
I will tell you that the state did provide a report of how they calculated the number, and they, in performing that calculation, they had doubled the number of participants that we have in the program. And that's not just us. They did that through many, many districts. So there's something fundamentally flawed about the way they went about this, so it was important to appeal it, and we'll see what they come back with.
And how many are appealing it?
What's
how
that?
How many districts are appealing it?
In Bergen County, there were 45 districts who were impacted, and 33 is the last number I heard had appealed it. So, and some significant numbers there for different districts. This is significant for us, but Ridgewood got creamed. So what does that do to our tax levy? Our tax levy for this year right now, which you approved a year ago, was the $44,207,000. I deduct that Chapter 44 adjustment, $290,000, gives me a new base of $43,917,000 almost, and then add 2% to that. So the new base at this point for next year is $44,795,000. Note that that's a 1.3% increase over last year, so we're entitled to a 2%. We can cut down to a 1.3. And this Chapter 44 issue is not a single year thing. Next year we'll be hit with another adjustment too. So it is important to get this right, for all of us to get it right. And to Mr. Hurley's point, that number, that 44,795, is the base we'll use going into next year. So we've lost about $300,000 of taxing ability there, and that's be our base for next year, so we don't get that back if changes aren't made. Yes.
Can you explain how that adjustment is not a one-year thing? What?
Because they're looking at the savings from Chapter 44 on an annual basis and applying them to the tax levy.
In perpetuity?
The whole thing sunsets, I think, in 2027, so it's not in perpetuity, but
It's
I mean,
6 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and in theory they could renew it at that point. Who knows? But
Okay.
okay, so this is an issue for us. So we're dealing with it right now. We'll keep you posted.
All right, but just for clarity, right, based on Mr. Bogosian's question, not only is the Chapter 44 savings every year, but if our appeal doesn't get approved, right?
Yep.
Our levy we're starting from next year is lower by that amount.
Yes.
So is 2% on top of that,
Yes.
then whatever savings they see next year.
They inflict on us, yes.
And again, if they don't do it right and perpetuate that, it could be a major issue down the road.
Yeah. I think the larger statewide organizations are looking at this. The Business Administrators Association, I think school boards, probably yours, is looking at this as well. So it's not over yet, and we'll see what the appeal comes back as, but we'll keep you posted.
When do you expect to hear about the appeal?
I don't know. I have to submit this by next Monday at the latest. I don't expect it before then, but we'll keep on top of them and we'll deal with it. Okay, state aid. As you can see, there's a much smaller number from 44 million down to 2.8 billion, but we did pick up an increase in state aid this year. Those numbers came out a week ago, Thursday as well, the 10th. So we'll pick up almost $109,000. That brings us up to $2.9 million. So I have a chart on that with some history. I have some insights there. Here it is. History of state aid. So this goes back, I think it's 21 years I managed to cram on there right now. If you can see this, at the very bottom, there are the blue bars. And they're, it's hard to tell because the screen's a little wavy there, but the blue bars are pretty consistent year after year after year. It was with an exception of about 10 or 12 years ago when Governor Christie came into office. But the blue bars represent our state aid number every year. Right? Like I said, it's about 2.9 million for next year is what's in the budget right now. The orange bars reflect our total general operating budget. And you see we've got a pretty steady increase year after year. Our costs go up. We try and introduce new programs. We do see a little dip in the far right bar relative to the one next to it. So the far right is 2022/23, the budget we're here to talk about. The second bar from the right is the 21-22 budget. Slight decrease. We'll get into that in a minute, but it's not a meaningful decrease as far as I see it.
Okay.
The squiggly line going through the whole chart is the state aid as a percent of our general operating budget. So if you see over the last 10 years, it's fairly consistent at that 6% rate. If you go back to the very beginning of the chart, that's about 10%. So, their contributions have decreased over time, but they have been consistent and slightly increasing, probably just not as high as our general operating budget is increasing.
So, Joe,
Yes.
so what percentage of fully funded are we? Because I know according to the funding formula, what's it get more?
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't have that information on me right now, but
I know it's much less than we supposed to get.
I'll get back to you on that. We also have other sources of funds. We have excess surplus, which is a number that comes out of the annual audit. This year it's $500,000. We have to build that into the budget. Last year was $532,000, so fairly consistent. We do try and manage that number downwards, so at least that's working. We do have some tuition revenue for the pre-K program. We're also using capital reserve. We'll get into the details on that, but you see we're about $700,000 less for 22-23 than we were for 21-22. And the reason is that we have some grants to do some projects. We have these building projects going on, the referendum projects still going on. So that's the reason for the decrease in the operating budget this year. But we're still getting a lot of meaningful work done outside of this budget. Uses of funds. Our challenges throughout the process, salary increases. It's a particular challenge this year because we're in the third year of the contract with the Rutherford Education Association, so that's currently being negotiated. So we just don't know where those numbers will fall. For the other, the first 2 years, we do know exactly where they'll fall because it's in the contract. So we do look at them on a person by person by person basis. So we have to make some assumptions here, and we do our best, and we tweak and we fine tune. Health benefits premiums. This one's a little hard to call. Our advisors have advised us to budget between 7 and 10%, but the last 2 years there's been a decrease. So I can't really reconcile that in my head, but I can't be caught short either when we get to next year and see what they do. So we've added 7% into the budget. Out of district placements, we do look at those on a student by student basis because that's a significant cost driver here. We do have a bit of a decrease this year. We're able to bring about 6 to 8 kids back into district. So I know we wouldn't do that if we didn't have the programs for them, but it saves us money as well. Extraordinary services, we keep an eye on that. We're pretty much flat on that for next year. And facilities and maintenance, we do talk to the principals. Mr. Paterno puts together a budget looking at all their needs for the next year, and that's all factored in here as well. Out of district placements, we've been through this before. I'll just go through this very quickly. If we do not have the resources in district to service the kids with specific needs, special needs, then we have to send them out. That's the law. That's the way it works. So we generally go look at the South Bergen Jointure Commission first. That's a local public school district, which has a lot of different special ed programs, and they run their tuition is generally significantly cheaper than, say, a private school for students with disabilities. Then we may go to other public schools. So our child study team is very resourceful in going out there and see what programs are available for students.
Does the jointure go to 12th grade?
Does it?
Jointure go to 12th grade?
Yes.
Okay.
Goes to 21,
It
actually.
goes to
I'm sorry.
21, yes.
Okay.
So looking at our history here for the last 20 years or so, the blue bars, the solid blue bars vertical, are tuition expenditures over the past 20 years. And you see that one is bumping up over 6 million. That was about 8 years ago. No, that's about $5.5 million. And you see there's a big drop the subsequent year. We talked about this at the time. This is when we brought some programs back in the house, the pre-K programs. So that's, we realized some significant savings on that. So we've seen a decline over the last couple of years, and we're projecting it that the far right vertical bar is the 22-23 budget. We are expecting a bit of a decrease there. So that helped us balance the budget as we went through everything else too, of course. Personnel, teaching staff, we have a number of retirements this year, I think 11 all told. That has generated approximately $285,000 in breakage. Breakage is defined as people at a higher salary retiring, leaving the district, replaced by people at a lower salary. So that difference is breakage, which can be put to use at other places in the budget. As it turns out, we have significant staffing needs for next year, as you can see in the bottom half of this screen. And that is the $285,000 essentially. I think it came to about $270,000, but it was a nice little wash there. Also down at the bottom, you can see that teacher assistants. We continue to monitor teacher assistants and the needs throughout the year. Very often a need pops up. A child gets an IEP. It says he needs a classroom aide. So if it's in his IEP, we have to do it. So we do keep an eye on that and monitor that throughout the year and make sure we have a little cushion in the budget for that.
Just as a note, I think this is the 8 years I've been here in this position. Probably the most staff we ever had to add, and some of that is dependent on because of the new classrooms at Pierpont, and adding a grade level, 2 classes every grade level. However, you see that 6 teachers, we're adding 3 because we also did, to try to deal within the budget, we reallocated some staff assignments currently had in Pierpont and restructured a bit to pick up 3 existing staff members to fill 6 of those new positions. So in a year that Mr. Kelly has highlighted some of the challenges, this is an additional challenge with the extra staff coming on board.
Facilities needs, that was the capital reserve number you saw. I think it was $279,000. There's some window reconstructions at Union. They've had issues there for quite some time, but Mr. Paterno and Mr. Schweitzer have found a solution. So we'll look to get that done hopefully this summer if we can. Replacement of the intercom PA bell system at Washington School. Mrs. O'Donnell needs some additional servers and switches. Those do become obsolete relatively quickly. It's just some money in there for whiteboards. Those generally go interactive whiteboards, smart boards. Those typically go about $5,000 a piece, and those two have to be replaced every so often. Mr. Paterno has some concerns about freeze pumps at Rutherford High School, and we also have our annual assessment from the Schools Development Authority. Basically, they're pushing their debt back to all the school districts, and they've been doing this for the last 15 years. But we have to eat that one. So we have, as we've done in the past, we use capital reserve for that. So this is the $279,000 you saw on a previous slide. District cost per pupil. This is Dr. Racine's slide here. The Taxpayer's Guide to Education Spending. This is an NJDOE report. It's on their website. It's really a very comprehensive document. Provides all sorts of metrics for every district in the states, and then ranks them and compares them based on enrollments and grade configuration. Unfortunately, they haven't updated it. I think it's close to 2 years now. So this is the information we're going through is the same one you saw last year. So there's nothing I can do about it at this point. My guess is that's probably going to fall by the wayside, but I think it does provide some valuable information. So there are 21 separate indicators. I use the budgetary per pupil cost, which broadly considers costs that are common to all districts and are therefore comparable in theory. So it includes salaries and benefits, textbooks, instructional supplies, legal fees, insurance, but it excludes tuition expenditures because every district has a different scenario there. Interest payments, some districts may not have any debt. We do, so it's not included. Transportation costs. Ours are generally pretty low because we're not a busing district, but they're not comparable for many districts. So that sort of mentality went into this. District factor group is a measure that the state put into place back in 1975. It has not been updated since the year 2000, so God only knows what it would look like right now. But it was something the state pulled together to show an approximate measure of a community's relative socioeconomic status, and to generate the district factor groups. They looked at the items I have there: percentage of adults with a high school diploma or some college education, occupational status, unemployment rate, percentage of residents in poverty, median family income, this sort of thing. So there are 8 different groups. As you can get the sense here, district factor group A and some of B are the former Abbott districts. These tend to be more urban and are more challenged per those factors I just rattled off there. You go down toward the bottom, Rutherford is a GH, similar equivalent to Fairlawn, Paramus, and a group of others that I'll get to in a second. And then a J is Ridgewood, Saddle River, Ho-Hocus, that sort of district, which may explain why Ridgewood got hit with $4.7 million. But we're a GH. So, and then we get to the chart. I know nobody can read this, but I will tell you that this is a couple years old now. The orange bars, I had to look this up myself, represents the 1920 budget for 9 districts that are in our district factor group in Bergen County. And I'll just read those names. From the left, Teaneck, Midland Park, Paramus, Westwood, Emerson, Fairlawn, Waldwick, Leonia, and Rutherford. I'll leave those 2 sets of bars to the right off for a second. The blue bars represent the 2018-19 actual expenditures, and as I said, the orange bars 2019-20 budgeted expenditures. As you'll see, our district cost per pupil at about $15,000 is about 2/3 of what Teaneck has on the far left side of the chart there. So we're doing more with less. I know the board has a lot of pride in the programs of this district, but we are doing more with less. There's nothing we can do to equalize that, because my sense is that it happened years ago when a board could go to the public and ask for a 10% increase, and maybe in a place like Teaneck, they got that every year. I don't know this, but I don't know the specifics. But I think Rutherford was probably always a little more moderate in that regard. So, I mean, this is going to look like this, apart from the fact they're not updating the numbers, but the relative numbers are probably not changing a whole lot. The two sets of bars on the right, the one on the left of the two is the average for those nine districts. So of course, because we are the lowest of the nine, we're below average. The two bars on the far right is the average for the entire state, every district. So we're still below what every other state is spending. So, I think there's a lot to be proud of there. It would be nice to have more money, but we've done a lot with what we have, and that is something to be thankful for. So going forward, tonight is the 21st. We'll be looking for board approval for me to submit the preliminary budget to the county office. Like I said, it is due next Monday, the 28th. These dates did shift. As you know, the governor's budget address was pushed back by 2 weeks, which pushes back the state aid release. It pushes back the budget system update. So they got 2 weeks. They gave us one, but we'll take it. And then Monday, April 25th, will be the official public hearing. Then we'll be looking for final board approval. And I would hope at that point that there is some resolution to this issue with Chapter 44, if we don't get it in the next week. And then we can reflect that in the budget. If it does come in the next week, I don't know if there's anything I can do with it right now, because you're approving the budget right now. Unless I can get you all back in this room sometime at the end of the week, then I can't submit that. So we just make that adjustment for April. So.
Right, but the adjustment, just so again, clarity for everybody or who may be in the audience or watching this, online, the dollar amount's not going to change. It's just the allocation of funds. I mean, we're
I'm talking about the Chapter 44
Chapter
adjustment.
44.
If the appeal is successful,
right.
then we'll be putting that back into the
Money,
budget.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
If the Chapter 44 comes.
Yes.
Will we know that before April 25th?
I hope so, but I don't know that. They've been a little cagey about this, so I can't say for sure. Any other questions? Okay, thank you all very much.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do want to just thank Joe and Mr. Kelly and his staff and everybody who's working on the budget, because this was really a challenge this year, more than most years. Can you get through? Going back 12 years, 10 years ago, I can't remember the exact date, when you have situations like this or you have things you want to increase, and many of you remember this as board members, the budget was always like a campaign. You'd come in and you say, we're going to raise it 5%, 4%, 3%. And it would be running a campaign to get people to vote yes on the budget. I always felt, being here for so many years, I can only remember 1 year that the budget wasn't passed. Going back 20, 25 years of votes, it was passed 23 or 24 of those times. So the community always supported it, but now we don't even have that opportunity anymore. So, whether the community would support it or not, you don't have that opportunity. So you have to just fit all your programs in with the dollars you got, regardless of, we didn't even talk tonight about utility costs, gas prices, oil prices, for heating and cooling going up, for electricity, and gas prices going up for the trucks that deliver everything to us, which then get passed on. So the same thing that happens to everybody's household is happening here, only at a $250 million budget. So it really is kudos to Mr. Kelly to get this done, in about a week when we heard about this loss that we had. And we are going to be holding our breath for a while, because we are projecting tuitions to go down. That can change with one student or two students in our school, or that are here but no longer can be here, or a couple move in. It could change with a roof having a problem. It could change with any number of things. And the slight bit of cushion we may have had to cover that, we're not really going to have that because of this money lost. So we have been very, very strong in the last, well, I'm going to say forever, but certainly I can only speak for my time here. We have added and not subtracted. We have tried to put programs in place without taking away. I don't think it's fair to improve one area while you diminish another. And we're still doing that this year. So again, I give credit also to the board and the finance committee. We had a lengthy meeting last Monday where we dug into all of this. It was very fresh, and the understanding and the support and the suggestions coming from the finance committee to Joe and to me are very, very helpful, more than you even know, in terms of moving forward. So we'll get through all this and we'll be okay. And then our budget managers, our principals, our supervisors, the athletic director, guidance director, they make do with what they have every year, and they make things work, and they stay within that. So very fortunate to have all these people here who help make us be what we are, a good district. I like to bring them home and help me with my budget at home sometimes, but so I really am grateful for all of that. And again, the work that Mr. Kelly had to put in, especially with the ongoing construction and the other stuff happening, has been a lot. Okay, so thank you all.
Well, that seems like a good segue into the report of the superintendent.
Well, I'll keep this even shorter than it usually is, which shorter for me means very long, right? The couple of things. I want to just really stay on the business and finance side. Again, congratulate Mr. Kelly and everybody involved with the budget, from the board level down to the folks in the schools. We had a clean audit report. We've had a clean audit probably 4 of the last 5 years, which is really unheard of, but it's not unheard of anymore here. And Mr. Marone, who you've met before, he's the gentleman from the Bowman and Company that comes here. Bowman and Company comes here every year. He'll be here on the 25th to give the full report to the public. So congratulations again to Mr. Kelly. I'm going to be done congratulating Mr. Kelly now. We're done with that for the day. Okay? Otherwise, he's going to get, yeah. I also want to all congratulations tonight. I want to congratulate the academic decathlon team, back-to-back state championships. I remember when I was principal, we won the first one about 15 years ago, and there's been 4 of them since then, which is remarkable in a very, very grueling, competitive academic activity, and against those schools that a lot of people think are the real heavy hitters, those last schools in that district factor group. That's who we're up against for the most part. And we're perennially win the region, and we've won the state now back-to-back. The Nationals used to be, one year they went to Alaska, one year they went all over the place. They've been virtual the last couple of years. They're staying virtual this year. Maybe that will change next year. But the Nationals are going to be held in the middle of April, and they'll have the results by April 23rd. And Mr. Narozny, who's the coach, congratulations to him. And as a English teacher like I was, he's said to me, well, April 23rd, like everybody knows, I'm sure you celebrate in your house, is William Shakespeare's birthday. So it will bring us perhaps some good luck as English teachers leading the charge there. Also, I want to congratulate and thank the Rutherford Education Association, the REA, for their March Madness Food and Fun Day on Saturday. I was very impressed when I was there with the number of people that were there. I think it was the most crowded one. We were in the biggest facility we ever had it in, the new gym at Pierpont. It used to be in the small gym, and it was probably more crowded. It was wonderful turnout. I think they had something like 64 or 65 cartons of food to donate to the food pantry. There's a lot of cans and boxes of food. So congratulations and thanks to them, and a good time for people who came out and for the kids. And also I gave people who haven't been to the gym a chance to see the new gym, and that was good too. Union Middle School's play, Beauty and the Beast, was this weekend. Went over to see that. It was really well done. The high school play was, I think, after our last meeting, I think it was, and that also, Matilda, that was well done. And good attendance in both productions. Again, it was good to see a lot of young children there because of the draw to both Matilda and Beauty and the Beast as being more children's stories. And our actors and actresses and set designers and musicians and everybody did a wonderful job, and the directors of the play. The REF will be having their Wizards game that was gone for 2 years, Harlem Wizards on Wednesday night. It's already sold out because they sold it out 2 years ago when it got canceled, and they're honoring all those tickets. So if you want a ticket, you're going to have to go on, some kind of a secondary resource through someone who's scalping their ticket from 2 years ago. Looking forward to that. It's a lot of fun and also a good fundraiser. And the REF now will also be doing their wine tasting later in the month of April. And this year has been, I think, a good year for the REF and getting back to, in-person fundraising events. Grant applications are due in April, so we'll see what the teachers come up with. I'll make some comments as we go through the agenda. It is a good feeling to be. I don't know when we're ever going to say we're back to normal. Maybe the normal is new, but it's great to see the full auditoriums and the full gyms and, just things looking pretty much like they looked like in the past. And I think our kids and our parents and adults have really embraced it. I think the enthusiasm that we're seeing with students participating in clubs and activities, coming out to support their classmates, or whether it's athletics or the arts, I think there's been a miss, and people are happy to be back. So we'll hope the good things keep going and even get better. Okay, so that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Questions or comments for Mr. Hurley?
I'll be remiss if I didn't say this, and I'll get in trouble too from somebody. I also want to mention, and the board had a big part in this, our boys lacrosse team started last year in their second year. We have our inaugural girls lacrosse team this year. That we have a large turnout. We had 38 boys try out for lacrosse, and we have somewhere in the mid to upper 20s for the girls in their first year. So both programs are really off to great starts. But it's great now to have we had to wait that year for the girls to get the numbers here. So it's great to have both programs up and running. Now I'm really done.
Questions or comments for Mr. Hurley?
Where do they have the field for that? Do they here?
Well, we have a team. The field's another story. No, they're practicing out here. But, as we talked about, this field is not very, very good. Sometimes down at Wall Field, sometimes down at Memorial, and they play their games at Tryon on the football field, lacrosse field.
Who's the head coach for the girls?
The girls is Mr. Ninko. And a young lady who's on the agenda tonight for a leave replacement as a phys ed teacher, Caitlin Jones, is the assistant coach.
And boys?
Foster, the phys ed teacher from Kindergarten Center. And you got me on the, he quizzed me all the time.
Sorry.
The out of district, he's an out of district assistant coach, so I don't remember his name. So, 2 out of 3 is not bad, right?
I'm not complaining.
Yeah, that's what he said. I'd be in the Hall of Fame if I was a baseball player.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Hurley? All right, hearing none, then we'll go on to the report of the president. I'm going to start with a congratulations to Mr. Bogosian. I think this might be the first meeting where you can see all of our faces since you joined the Board of Ed.
Oh, that is true.
So I want to echo something Mr. Hurley said, but also give him kudos along with Mr. Kelly, which is to have a clean audit is a phenomenal thing. It requires a level of fiscal prudence, real accountability, organizational skill set. And every year when we do budget work, I know we talk about maintenance budgets are sort of like the peacetime budgets, which are the budgets that, there's nothing huge going on in them. And this is not even one of those years. And so serving on all these committees since I've become president, I really get to see the strategy and the forethought that goes into things and the nature of problem solving. So really appreciate that you've been thinking so far in advance and thinking creatively. I think we've all seen how you are really trying to do the best you can for the students, whether it's thinking about personnel, programs, and not compromising the integrity of the program. So thank you for all your great work on that.
Thank you.
So I got to visit a couple of fun things. I was at Pierpont this weekend for March Madness, and that was great. Congratulations. It was a huge turnout. I don't know if I remember when my children went there, but there were a lot of great games. I tried to challenge an 8-year-old to Connect Four, and he declined my challenge. I must have looked a little scary. Also, my daughter came in from college to come with me to see Matilda a couple weeks ago, and it was phenomenal. You know, I guess when your kid's in a show, you sort of focus on them a little bit, so it was great not to focus on her and to really see, phenomenal talent, and they really did a great job with the show. Also, just wanted to give a couple of public acknowledgments of things that Mr. Hurley let us know. A thank you to the Rutherford Elks Lodge that gave a $2,500 donation to the Heroes and Cool Kids program, which is super important. That's also funded by the RAF. Good luck on March 31st for the CUSAC visit, focusing on facilities. My understanding is we've been doing really well up until now, so best of luck, and we look forward to hearing about that. And that is pretty much my report. Any questions or comments? All right, hearing none, then at 8:16 p.m., we are going to open the meeting to the public for items related to tonight's agenda. Okay, hearing none, at 8:16 p.m., we're going to close the meeting to the public, and we will move on to new business where there is action to be taken. We'll start out with personnel. Mrs. Ahmed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, we were being presented 19, for us to go over 19 motions today. Number 1 is John Rodney Marcella to accept his resignation as teacher assistant in Rutherford. And please forgive me for murdering these names tonight. They're kind of difficult, but hopefully I won't insult anyone. Arletta Jasnika to accept her resignation as lunch monitor at Union Middle School, effective March 11th. Lori Mundy to approve her as a guidance counselor for Pierpont School from March 1st through June 30th, 2022. 4, Chelsea Effett to approve her as a chemistry teacher at Rutherford High School. 5, Ann Riordan to approve her as an elementary teacher for Pierpont School. 6, Patrick O'Connor, a long-term substitute physical education teacher at middle school. Caitlin Jones, number 7, for a long-term substitute physical ed teacher at Union Middle School, and that's from the 11th to the 24th. Okay. 8th, John O'Hanlon, to approve the change of a start date for Mr. O'Hanlon as social studies teacher for Rutherford High School from February 28th to April 4th. 9, Elvin Sevink as a part-time teacher assistant at Lincoln School. 10 is Christine Sagakiewicz as a clerical assistant for the Bulldog Care Program. 11, employee 2038 to approve a leave of absence under the New Jersey Family Leave Act and U.S. Family and Medical Leave Act concurrently for employment 2038, effective December 6th through March 4th. 12, high school co-curricular to approve the creation of Italian Culture Club based on student interest. The following high school non-stipend assignments: Paul Scuddy, Assunta Smith, Deborah D'Elia, and Carmen Spino. 13, coordinator for Summer Enrichment Academy. Approved Darlene Monticello as a coordinator of the Summer Enrichment Academy. 14, Karen Skirbo, to increase her maximum hours. A head lunch monitor in Lincoln School from 19.5 per week to 29.5 per week to cover the main office when staff is out, effective March 22nd through June 30th, 2022. 15, Bulldog Care Counselors, before and after care, to approve the program for the district for the 2022 school year at the hourly rate $19, 25 hours per week, effective March 22nd. And that's for Jonathan Hughes and James Lillis. That's the counselors. So with the board's approval, I call a vote for approval of the superintendent's approval.
We have one more page.
Huh?
There's another.
19. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I stopped at 16 from All right, so substitute teachers, and we're 17, right?
Yes.
Correct.
No, we're on 16 because we just did Jonathan Hughes.
Yep.
Yeah.
16.
16. Summer Enrichment Academy curriculum. For approval for teachers, the curriculum writers for the Summer Enrichment Academy: Christina Ruglio, Elba Cruz, Christina Knapp, Paula Rizzoli. And 17. Substitute teachers. Approve the following teachers for the 21-20 school year at per diem rate of $90. Constance DeFazio, Nicola Kubaka, and Michelle Sprazinski. 18. Substitute teachers. Substitute teacher assistants for the 21-22 school year at $13. Nicola Kubaka, Michelle Sprazinski. 19. Travel reimbursements for the following teachers, and that's Jacqueline Ruskowski, Andrew Vanderhoof, Victoria Lutz, Isabel Wall. So, with the board's approval, I ask the board to, and the superintendent's approval, really, to ask motions for 1 to 19 be voted on.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Ahmed. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, Mrs. Ahmed has moved those. Do I have a second? All right, Mr. Sprayberry, any last comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Bogosian,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Oladi.
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on now to curriculum and instruction. Ms. Jones.
Thank you. There are 6 resolutions or motions that are put forth on the recommendation of the superintendent. Number 1, superintendent's merit goal. There was changed to have 6 second cups of coffee with the superintendent because they had found when they had those with the principals, they did well in getting people there, and that would be a nice addition for the superintendent's merit goal. Number 2, out-of-district placement. 3, field trips, we're up to 63. Number 4, an HIB bullying decision. 5, home instruction for 1 student. And 6, stress-less summer program, which will be held from 9 to 2 at Pierpont School with our HIB and guidance counselors too are involved with that. And that's it.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Jones. Comments or questions? No. Hearing none. All right, Mrs. Jones.
I move resolutions 1 through 6 under C and I.
All right. Do we have a second? Mr. Bogosian, any last comments or questions? Hearing none. Mr. Kelly, please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Bogosian,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Oladi.
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on now to finance. Dr. Racine.
Thank you. So we had a finance meeting last Monday, and Mr. Kelly did my work for me and talked about everything that we spoke about at the meeting, the audit, budget status, the budget update, chapter 44, all that. I'd like to add that getting a clean audit is something that we've become used to, but it's not something that happens a lot. Remember the first time we did a clean audit, Mr. Kelly said, something's wrong, we got a blank page. Right? So, we have to accept it, but it's still a really great feature. Right. So thank you. Okay. Moving on, we have 10 items tonight on the finance agenda. Number 1, the approval of bills. Number 2, the February 22 report. Number 3, budget transfers. 4, a donation from the Rutherford Elks to the Here the Cool Kids program. Number 5, a donation from Michael Furno to the music department. Number 6 is our contract for custodial management services. 7, the approval of the budget that we just saw. Number 8 is to approve district travel. Number 9, the semi-corrective action plan, which is in our package. Number 10 is a bit unusual. These are travel reimbursements for St. Mary's principal and the AD but it's pass-through money not coming through our budget. It's from our budget. Yeah. Kelly, you want to elaborate on any of those? Or we good?
Yes, if I may, number 6, which is the custodial management contract. 10 or 12 years ago, the board had made a decision to outsource the nighttime custodial staff. I will say, I think it was a struggle the first few years. It was before my time, but we ended up with Aramark about 5 years ago, and they've actually done a very good job. But anyway, the last time we did an RFP was for 5 years, which now expires. So we had to go out again. So we prepared the specs, and we issued the request for proposals. We got 4 responses back, and what was very unusual is that all 4 of the companies have been here before, have worked here before. So we had experience with all of them. And the beauty of the request for proposals as opposed to a bid is that you don't have to go with the lowest price. You can consider other factors as well. So having said that, we convened a committee of administrators to take a look at these things, these proposals, and make a determination, make a recommendation. On the committee were myself and Mr. Paterno, who's the Director of Buildings and Grounds, Dr. Volechko, who's the principal at Lincoln School, as you know, and Mr. Schweitzer, who's the principal at Union School. So we evaluated the proposals, and I'm happy to say we had a unanimous recommendation to appoint Aramark to continue going forward. One of the reasons is that we have a very strong on-site supervisor that makes or breaks the program. And so she's done a great job, and happy to report that she's going to stick around for another year or two before, in case something else comes up that tempts her. But we've got a good program in place, and we're going to continue with it. And given everything that's happening in the buildings this summer, it's nice that we don't have to transition custodians too. So I will say also just finally that the number for 22-23 is $1.1 million. That is significantly higher than this year's number, which I think was in the roughly $900,000. So it's up about $200,000. The reason is we have increased square footage now. We've got 2 new gyms, or we will come September. We've got a whole wing over at Pierpont School, so of course that all had to be factored in. So I just wanted to give you a little background on that. Yes, Mrs. Jones.
Just kind of piggyback on what you had said, when you said 12 years ago, that was 2010, when Governor Christie
Yes.
cut everybody's budget. And at the time, we were scrambling like every district was. And the decision then was to cut the nighttime custodians, mostly because of the benefits, because we were paying benefits then. And the first year or two, we did not pay benefits for whoever we contract. I can't remember which one it was then. But now, this figure, is this including benefits?
Yes.
Because we pay them now. Okay.
Well, one of the previous contractors, you're correct, they were not unionized, but the contractor brought in the SEIU, and now they're
I know,
part of the
years,
process
right.
here every year. So, but yes, there are benefits, and that's factored into the cost as well.
That they were wild meetings because
Yes.
the audience was packed. Maybe Colleen will remember it, but there are many custodians that were upset, with it. But what are you going to do? We had to cut someplace, and there was a decision by the board not to cut programs, and so that was the only place.
Yeah, I went through it in a different district too.
I'm
The
sure.
same thing. It was
I'm sure.
chaos. But I will. But you raised Governor Christie's name. That was the point on those slides too.
Exactly.
That
Yes.
the
Right.
state aid went down, the budget went down.
Right.
It was the same time.
And that's when you could move your budget from April to November, provided that you kept the 2%. That took a vote from the board to do that, and the first year it did not go through. It was 5 members of the board that did not want to move to November, and 4 that did, and then it reversed. And there were it was the best thing, because I don't know how many more years we would have kept passing. I think 1985 was the last budget that we lost,
I believe you're right.
because that was the first year that I ran, and we lost it at that point, and I vowed we would never.
No correlation with that. But no, I think you're right. I think it was mid-'80s, and
Yeah, and then we battled for them.
Yeah.
And at the time, Mrs. O'Keefe was very instrumental because she had gotten the taxpayers involved in understanding the budget, and so they didn't put their big campaigns on.
It was like running a mini referendum every year.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of work.
A lot of work. And so, you know, yeah, I mean, there are definitely benefits, but there's also the idea that if something comes up that everybody in the community was in agreement that, hey, let's spend the money, we can't. So there's, you know, benefits and detriments there. But to Mr. Kelly's point again, we are very pleased with Aramark. You know, some of those early companies, I lived through it.
Yeah.
You know, you get what you pay for, and we had some real issues with some of them. But Aramark's done a really good job. And we're going to be adding a couple of custodians at Pierpont and one at Union, or
Yes, I think that's right.
yeah, because of the extra. I mean, Union, you're adding 11 classrooms, a gym, and a couple of offices and faculty rooms. It's really a small school we're adding over there. So, you know, that's why the costs are up too. We're adding space and custodians. Not Union, Pierpont.
Yeah.
Sure, that is.
When you said,
I just wanted to see if anybody was paying attention.
I didn't want to correct you.
Other questions or comments?
I'd like to say that, you know, for Joe and Jack, you know, being on the finance committee, you know, the effort that you put in and an explanation he just gave tonight, he gave to us on the finance committee and actually went deeper. And, you know, the homework you do, what you learn, you know, going through that, you know, and if you walk the schools at night, as many of us parents in the district have, and we go through these schools, they look amazingly clean. I mean, they look wonderful. They really, really do.
They're
So
good.
to see that and to, you know, to be able to continue that, and especially with the added 50,000 square foot of space and that cost, especially with the rising cost of everything today, for Aramark to only be up, you know, a few of that percentage with that additional space, I think was a win-win for the district. So, great job.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question
Ms.
about
Ahmed?
the gyms? The Pierpont gym, is that large enough for the high school to ever practice or
They do.
train in?
Yeah, they did this year. Yep. You could play games there
Good.
if you wanted to.
All right, Dr. Racine, do you want to move those?
So I'll make it.
Yep.
I'd like to move items 1 through 10 in finance.
All right. Mr. Mazzone, you're going to second that? Yes, sir. All right. Any last questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. Kelly, please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Bogosian,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Owati.
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you very much.
All right. We're going to move on now to policy. Mr. Healy.
Yes, the policy committee did not meet, but we did correspond with the superintendent and administration regarding the proposed policy changes for tonight, which all but one is not mandated. All the others are mandated. And there's 13 policy changes as listed, 4 new policy and regulations and 9 revised. And this would being put forth as a first reading. All these as listed.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, so as a reminder, we have to approve these twice. So this is the first reading tonight. We'll approve it, and then we'll approve it again in the next board meeting. Anything you want to add about policies? No? Any questions or comments? All right. Mr. Healy, you want to move
Yes,
this?
I'd like to put forth these 13 policy changes.
All right. Thank you. Do we have a second? All right, Mr. Bogosian. Any last questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. Kelly, please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Bogosian,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Owati.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Excellent. We're going to move on now to buildings and grounds. Mr. Sprayberry.
Good evening. We have 3 resolutions. We did not have a Buildings and Ground Committee this month. We have 3 resolutions to move forward at the superintendent's request. Cubbies at Lincoln Elementary School will be coming out of the general operating fund. Lockers at Rutherford High School coming out of the capital projects fund. And we have for our PSA to authorize them to submit for Department of Education, plans for the Union School main office for abatement moisture project.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Ms. Jones?
I just have one question on the cubbies. Is this for the old building?
No, it's the design of the 2005 or 4 edition put the cubbies coming out from the wall, cutting into the room. And now with larger sizes of class, more computers, more activities, more kinesthetic activities, we want to get the cubbies back against the wall area so that there's more space in those classrooms.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Sprayberry, you want to move this?
I'd like to move with 3 motions for approval, please.
Can I get a second? Mr. Healy, any last questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. Kelly?
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Bogosian,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Awadi.
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on now to old business. Is there any old business that anyone would like to bring up? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to a legislative update. Mrs. Jones?
Just a couple of quick ones. There is a residency requirement repeal. This is Senate Bill 904, which would eliminate the state residency requirement for public school employees for a period of 3 years. The NJSBA testified in support of the bill, which is intended to increase the pool of potential job applicants and help address staffing shortages districts are experiencing. Do I understand that there is a requirement that
You have to live in New Jersey. This is not, I mean, I know a lot of people's ears probably perked up, not residency for students, residency
Right.
for staff. You have to live in New Jersey now to work in New Jersey schools.
The superintendent-
If you lived out of state prior to the law, you were grandfathered.
Oh, the grandmother. Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification. And cardiac exams for student physicals. Senate Bill 129 requires that every student enrolled in both public and non-public schools to undergo a physical examination using the participation physical evaluation form for grades 6 through 12. Previously, such evaluations were only required for sports participation. The NJSBA supports this bill, and this will go into effect if it's approved for the year 23-24. So that's interesting.
Mhm.
Thank you. That's all.
One quick one, which may or may not happen, but state testing is back after a 2-year hiatus, and it's changed on the high school level to revert back to what it was pre-Park, which was basically a high school graduation test that you take in 11th grade, so there's only 1 year being tested. And the testing window opened a week or so ago, and our high school juniors took the test this week, or last week. Well, the way the state's been moving lately, there is currently a bill that's gone through the Assembly, and now is going to move on to take this year's test that we already took and make it a field test. In other words, it won't count. Everybody will get a pass. And the logic of that, which is not bad logic, and is that with the 2-year impact of COVID, and we felt it, but not maybe as badly as some other districts that were out remote for a better part of 2 years. It would be unfair to make that test the graduation test. Test has that bill has logic. It would have been nice if they discussed this and thought about it in December or January and not after people are already taking the test. But at least we'll know if it's a field test, we're going to get our scores won't reflect that kids are thinking it doesn't count. They gave it their best shot anyway. So
Good.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Jones. So at 8:39 p.m., we're going to open the meeting to the public for any comments related or not related to tonight's agenda. All right, hearing none at 8:40 PM, we are going to close the meeting to the public, and we are going to need to have an executive session for 8 student matters, 1 personnel matter, and an REA negotiation update,
And other contracts, a couple of
and a
contracts.
couple of contract updates. So it should be out for about 20 minutes?
20 minutes.
20 to 30 minutes, no action to be taken. So need a motion to go into executive session. Mr. Mazzone, seconded by Mr. Bogosian. All in favor? All right, we will go into executive session.